totally want to be here for this talk tonight. My name's Sean Records. I teach photography here for about 11 years as an adjunct. I teach here, I teach at PCC, and I was doing some math, and I realized that if I teach 9 classes per year, an average conservative estimate of 15 students per term, or per class, for 10 years, because I took a little time off at one point. Basically, that's 1,350 students who I have had, and I'm just an adjunct, right? But when I realized that, it's all connected here, is because I see these patterns. When you teach photography, you see the same patterns coming up again and again and again. And so I'm kind of excited about Corey's talk tonight because I can totally see how it sort of works in with this. Because at first, and keep in mind, I want you to know this, Corey. You're a photo guy. We are, 3 weeks into a term. So many students, like my students who are here, are basically on their 5th day of photo class. And so we're all still learning things like camera things. Bobby's class, I'm sure, is here. Lots of photo students. So at that point, it's all about shutter speeds and f-stops and that kind of stuff. After that, at least in my classes, the way it's going to work, photography kind of turns into rectangles. You know, once you figure out the machine, what do you do with a rectangle? Because photography is this completely absurd act, if you think about it. You walk around out in the world and you are plucking rectangles out of space with this goofy little machine. When it gets really fun, though, is when you realize that those rectangles, when you add things like context and metaphor, like there's meaning in those. And so then that's where photography comes alive. When all of a sudden these rectangles have additional meaning built up with them and kind of equal more than what's in the rectangle. That said, Corey Arnold, he has been making amazing work, and he has been primarily, is it safe to say, Corey, that you've primarily been working as a commercial fisherman for 15 years?
I'd say it's
50-50. But that means it's also moved to 50-50, where the proportions have shifted, right? No? 50-50. Half fishing, half photography. In that time, he has had numerous, I don't know if you've looked at his website. You should. I went to his website so I could write down all the places that he's had shows and all the magazines he's, put work in. And I got tired just from reading the lengthy list of accomplishments that Corey Arnold has. So you should definitely go to his site and check that out, because one of the things that I know helps students the most is to actually learn from and talk to people who do the thing that they're interested in, okay? And what I really want my students to sort of pay attention to tonight is simply that there's always this question, once you learn the camera and you learn the rectangle, what do you say? Photography is a language. What do you say with that medium? And I think Corey's a great example of someone who lets the photography follow the life, okay? Pay attention to your life. Do what you care about, period. And then the artwork part of things, whether it's photography or sculpture or painting or whatever you do, that will fall into place once you figure the life part of things out. So Corey's work, I look at Corey's work, so much of it based on fishing and that world and the sea, but really it's not about fishing. It's about scale. It's about being human. It's about being really small in a huge, amazing world. And so, I don't know. Think that through as these images come up. I'll shut up. Thank you, Corey Arnold. Oh, one other thing. Afterwards, we're going to open up the gallery downstairs where there is a photo show going on right now. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's beautiful. We'll just open it up right afterwards for anyone else to come by. Thanks. Corey Arnold.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks to Sensini for inviting me out here, and it's an honor to be introduced by Sean Records. I'm a big fan of his work as well. So anyway, so I'm here to show you a ton of photos, and like Sean said, it's a lot about, well, I have two careers. So I'm a commercial fisherman. I've been working in Alaska on various boats since 1995. And I grew up, at a very young age. My father got me a camera, and so I've been into photography as well. But those two career paths sort of merged at some point and came together and sort of developed the work that I'm doing today and that I've been doing for the last 10 years or so, which is I've sort of dedicated my life to photographing commercial fishing and kind of photographing my life as I move through the world, experiencing different fishing cultures. And I do a lot of other things as well, but mostly tonight I'm going to kind of talk about how my work came to be what it is today and how fishing informed my photography. So it all started when I was in diapers still, I think. This is probably one of the first fish I caught when I was little. I grew up in Southern California. My father was an avocado grower, and he worked a ton. So on weekends, our escape was to go fishing in the ocean out of Oceanside, Southern California. And so we had this 21-foot boat, and we pretty much went every weekend, it seemed like, when I was little. And I became as addicted as my father. And so he sort of, getting to know the ocean at a really young age like this, I felt this incredible connection. I was a big game fisherman every year for Halloween, like all throughout elementary school. When people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was a fisherman. And my dad was kind of a maniac fisherman and also a really obsessive amateur photographer. So he would photograph everything we caught at all times. Anytime I caught something big, it was like, pull it out of the water, and my dad's standing there with his camera. So I sort of have this whole album of me getting older, going through all these different fashion periods and holding all these crazy little fish. So this is like late 80s, going into early 90s. This is probably like 85 right here. So this is like me wearing a Darth Vader t-shirt and a Garfield hat, some lake in Utah. So it's funny because I've chosen a similar path as my father, but these were both just hobbies for him, and I turned them both into professions and sort of took them in a totally different direction. So I'm just showing a few of these. And then that is, I think I'm 19 there. This is sort of at the end of the fishing period with my father, where it's kind of like I'm on my own, and ended up going to art school. So I never really thought I was going to become a photographer. I just sort of, I had a camera at a young age. I took a lot of photos, and I was really encouraged by my parents and people around me. They told me I took good photos, and so I just kept kind of doing it on the side, and went to school in northern Arizona for a couple years, and I was going to do forestry or something totally random like science. And I was always taking little side classes in photography. And finally, just so many people convinced me I needed to go to art school and kind of go with this. So I went to the Academy of Art College, and I started just branching out and just exploring and and wandering the streets at night in San Francisco, and just use photography as a means to explore the world around me and go on adventures and document it and have an excuse to go on adventures and an excuse to meet interesting people. And I was always photographing my nieces. I was really interested in mystery and photos that, curious images that sort of make you wonder what's going on and not providing explanation for what's going on. This is my niece, and this is a real potato we just bought at the store, like Safeway or something. Or it was in a sack of potatoes, and it just happened to be in her pantry at the time. So I had my niece just grab this potato, and she stood in the street and just started staring like that and just held that freakish pose. And I think I have like 40 pictures that are the same exact photo because she just held it in this crazed way. And I'm just been really attracted to this kind of work. Pictures that, in school and early on, it was sort of, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I was just, there was no real meaning behind these photos in a way. I'm just going with this feeling and creating these mysteries and wanting people to sort of use their imagination to come to their own conclusion about what this photo is about. And this is sort of a strange film accident, this line. I have no idea what that line is through the photo, but this is me throwing my cat up in the air and putting the camera under and photographing her like falling to the bed, actually. So this is kind of my earliest work, late 90s and early 2000s. There's three photographers that probably are my biggest influences, early on especially. I mean, I've kind of moved on and have a lot of other photographers I'm interested in, but early on in the foundation of what I'm interested in, I'd say Sally Mann was really key. She did, it looks like documentary work, but it's mostly staged. And she'd create these dreamy scenarios with her family that always provoked your imagination. And so, also Joel Sternfeld, he was more of a documentary photographer, but he would come across these incredible situations and often pulled back landscape work like this. That also has had a big influence on what I do. So, and Peter Beard, when I found Peter Beard, I was like, this is really what I'm after. This guy lived in Africa, and he was documenting the slaughter of crocodiles by the natives down there. And so he was doing real documentary work, and then he would also just play around and take photos like this. And I thought, if I can apply this same sort of feel to my commercial fishing work, that's sort of the ultimate goal for me. So this is me in 2002. I graduated college in '99 and spent a couple of years assisting photographers. I was living in San Francisco, and I had been working in Alaska in the summers, commercial fishing for salmon, trying to make money, but really not making much money. And then the whole economy collapsed in 2001, and I was kind of like, it's a really bad time to become a photographer, How am I going to make a living? And so I decided to go back up to Alaska. I found a job and worked on a cod boat for a couple months, did a lot of selfies with fish, and then I decided I'm going to set out and document this lifestyle. I ended up getting a job on a crab boat, and this is the Rollo. It's a 107-foot crab boat. It's based out of Seattle. And we were fishing king crab and opilio crab. And I thought, I would always go to Alaska and come back and was telling my friends about it. And this is early days of the internet, and you couldn't really find a lot of photos of what was going on in commercial fishing in Alaska. There wasn't all these reality shows and stuff, so I thought, like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fish and I'm gonna document this crazy life. Instead of telling all these stories, I'm gonna show everyone what this is all about. And so I worked on this boat for 7 years. I was only gonna do it for a couple years, and I loved my captain and crew, and they were pretty into me taking photos. Like they let me just take time out from time to time and take a few photos, but mostly I was working as a fisherman. And this is 2005, and I ended up getting a cat at the pound, and we threw her on the boat, and we had a boat cat for a few months out there. So I guess stemming from my childhood, I had this incredible passion for the ocean, and when I found this kind of work, it's probably some of the hardest work, you can do. The conditions are really treacherous. It's often, probably on average 15-foot seas, and we've seen 40-foot seas and bigger out there, and we're moving around these 800-pound crab pots. So the work was really, really dangerous and really scary at first, but after a while you kind of get into a rhythm, and it doesn't seem quite as scary. But so I was shooting this work for a couple years, and I was pretty, excited. Thought I was really onto something that no one else had been touching, and then suddenly Discovery Channel showed up in town, and I was kind of thinking, oh man, this could go either way. I want to do like kind of an art project on Dutch Harbor, Alaska, and the crab fishing. And then when they came, it was like, oh, it's suddenly mainstream, But oddly enough, we ended up making friends with some of the camera crew people, and we ended up having them on our boat for a season. And I ended up actually shooting some, while I was shooting my work, I would shoot on the side and actually do some advertising campaigns for Discovery Channel. So that was kind of my first break into actually making money off photography. And this shot, one of my colleagues, his birthday is on January 17th every year, and the first day of the crab season is January 15th. So every year his birthday would fall on like the second day of the season, one of the most hectic days. And I thought it was really interesting that fishermen, because it's seasonal, you miss out on anniversaries and birthdays, and you might have a child while you're up there fishing, and you kind of have to be there because it might be the only income you're making for the year. So this is sort of a photo I put together. I had bought a piñata, and we had a little piñata birthday party for him. And we just happened to have the Deadliest Catch guys on the boat filming while I was doing this shoot. So I have a little video here of that back in the day. This is like 20, 25-foot seas, and the deck is filled with ice. And that's me photographing on the left, actually. So that steel rod like flew 30 feet across and hit the crane operator's operation, basically. So anyway, That was, and then that was the shot I got while that action was going on. So I'm always trying to kind of, capture authentic moments, and also I'll sort of put things together that I want to capture a little bit of the essence of what this life is about, even if it's not, if it's staged or whatnot. So we're always playing practical jokes on each other and stuff, so I figured this seemed relevant. And also, this is a crewman I worked with that was missing a finger, but he had all kinds of different stories for why he was missing the finger, but it was actually like a high school woodshop accident. So this is probably, of all my photographs, this is probably the one that's gotten the most coverage around, and it's the cover of my book of this work. And this is basically, we're on our way in, and king crab season falls like in the last week of October, so we're always going straight in and going to a huge Halloween party in town at the bars. And so we were kind of trying on our Halloween costume on the way in, and the cat walked by, and my buddy Matthew picked up the cat, and then that was the shot. So I love the work, but fishing is a love-hate relationship. It's complete hell a lot of the time. And sometimes I think maybe, I actually only love it when I'm back on shore and thinking about it and the nostalgia of how it was. But when you're in it, it's kind of hellacious and lonely. And this is a little illustration of what my relationship was like with the crew, especially when I was photographing, because they would always give me a hard time because I wasn't working. But after 7 years, it wasn't like I was really photographing that much. I would just grab my camera when there was moments of, huge seas or something interesting going on, or strange light, And this is me, top right, and the rest of our crew on the Rollo. You guys can actually shout out any questions if you have along the way too. I don't mind. I can at least try it if you're interested. So after I started photographing this crab series, I created a website and put my work out there. And once I started fishing, I was making a little bit of money, so I didn't have to think so much about making money off photography. And it was a huge relief because suddenly I could do what I wanted, buy a little time, buy some equipment, and just create my own projects and start exploring. And so when I put the crab series online and started getting blogged and my photos started kind of getting around the internet a little bit, and people just started coming to me and asking me to do different projects. So I ended up getting the Pew Foundation contacted me and sent me to Europe for 2 months and photographing in 8 countries, fishing industries all around Europe. And it was a complete dream job. And they gave me all the leeway to kind of shoot the work I wanted to shoot. It wasn't like a real job. It was kind of I created my own project. It's kind of like getting a big grant, really. So I created this series called Fishwork Europe. And hopefully I'm going to put this together into a book one of these days.
Is it just a picture book or something that you wrote into
What?
the book that you have up there?
Oh, this book? This is mostly just photos, and I have a little bit of writing, a couple pages in there. This is the Bering Sea series from crabbing.
Molasses.
Yep. So it was a whole new challenge to sort of show up in Europe, and I was mostly traveling alone, and often there's language barriers and whatnot, and trying to talk my way onto boats, trying to get people to trust me. And it really helped that I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska, because suddenly people were immediately interested and wanted to hear my story as well. So we had really good back and forth going. And a lot of people told these horror stories of having camera crews on their boat and everyone being seasick. And so I felt like it was a pretty nice advantage to have my background in fishing. And so these guys were willing to, do anything. They were really excited about being photographed, and someone coming all the way from Alaska and wanting to photograph them, It's amazing. I used to have incredible stage fright of, just approaching a group of strangers, and especially like in the commercial fishing world, guys can be pretty gruff and unapproachable, seemingly, but that's not really the case at all. So it's just a matter of asking and getting in there. And these are some guys in Spain that were just like, obviously, just happy guys, pumped to be documented. And it's the same everywhere. The fishing culture is pretty universal. I mean, it's complete hell, but everyone, there's this amazing camaraderie, that makes it worthwhile. And I have a little video. So I've been kind of dabbling with shooting video, but not really knowing what I'm doing. And I'm putting together these little art films from all my trips. And so this is a really raw version from a trip on a beam trawler in the Netherlands. So. So anyway, that's just a little clip to give you an essence of what life is like. Especially in Europe, they're really into trawling. And that brings me to, it was interesting when I got hired by the Pew Foundation. They sort of wanted me, were in a way using me and my background as a fisherman to take a lot of photos that help support their message to kind of control overfishing and protect the oceans. And for me, going into these situations, I didn't know a lot about. I didn't know who was fishing sustainably, and which fisheries were more damaging. And so anyway, that beam trawl footage you just saw was considered some of the most damaging fishing to the seafloor. I don't know if you saw that massive steel beam going over the side and down, and it's dragged at like 8 miles an hour across the seafloor and has these 10 huge chains that dig under and churn the soil. So it's always been a little bit of a dilemma for me because I support commercial fishing and I'm a big advocate for sustainable fishing. But it's a complicated issue when you show up and these are people who have been doing this for generations and they have a totally different theory on what's going on the bottom, and they consider that it's like plowing the field, which kind of makes sense when you think about farming. Plowing a field, it actually makes it more fertile. So that's often their argument. So for me, I sometimes am acting as this liaison between, if I'm working for environmental NGOs, whatnot, kind of trying to bring the message together and find common ground and kind of educate each other on what's going on out there. So, and then whenever I can find some sort of bizarre moment, I'm mostly interested in that. So. This is some random seagull walking around with a piece of styrofoam and no sign of any reason why it's attached to its wing. And I think from my youth, toying with little sea creatures all the time, I'm super fascinated with just the science of all the little creatures we pull up. I have another video here, but I'm going to skip it actually for time's sake. So I just thought I'd show a few of the commissioned work, tear sheets and stuff I've done. Some of my early breaks were getting into commercial fishing magazines like this, National Fisherman. And then, of course, when Deadliest Catch ended up on our boat, I took some shots and did some ads for them. And suddenly I had this, 10-story billboard in Times Square. It sort of dropped out of the sky since it was sort of an accident that I just happened to be there when they started filming Deadliest Catch. And then the work has been featured in a lot of magazines. And this photo has been on the cover of about 5 different art magazines and books. And I'm still, to stay connected with the fishing world, I still do a ton of work for almost nothing, but with the commercial fishing trade magazines. And always excited when a magazine gets in touch with me and wants to send me out on a boat somewhere. I'm just hoping to build this trove of life at sea around the world during this period, which is a really uncertain period and how things are going to go in the ocean. And then that work has sort of led to magazines sending me on all sorts of things. There's usually some sort of sea theme involved or Arctic theme, but I'm pretty excited when I get sent to a warm place, which is really rare. But I got sent to Bikini Atoll by Outside Magazine to photograph the site of the atomic testing by the U.S. military in the 50s. And then I got to go out with these Mexican fishermen in the Sea of Cortez. We were searching for the world's smallest dolphin, the vaquita dolphin. And then this Canadian travel magazine kept sending me to amazing places, and I ended up in Greece with my own, totally odd, but I had like a little private yacht taking me around, and I would just jump over and kind of swim with my underwater camera to shore and kind of photograph people on the beach and jump off. It was a trip about the food of Greece. Not so much. No, I just have a splash housing, so I can only go like 30 feet deep. So I try to, more and more, but like I ended up on this great white shark diving trip. It was for Sunset Magazine. And in this case, I had my underwater camera on a 15-foot bamboo pole with a trigger. So I was following the sharks around and stuff. And anytime I can do environmental work or work in the Arctic, pretty excited about that. So did a story about shell drilling in the Arctic and hung out in Barrow with whalers in Barrow while they're carving the trails out to the open ice. Oh yeah. Pretty bold statement. And so meanwhile, I started showing work in galleries. I'm represented by Charles Hartman Gallery here. This was in San Francisco at the Fecal Face Gallery. I owe a lot to Fecal Face, worst website name in the world. But back when the internet was young, only like 10 years ago, they were sort of a real hub, an art website hub down in the Bay Area, and so they did some features of my work, and that's sort of what got me out there. I guess the takeaway, if you take away anything from this, is that I've always just sort of followed the path that I wanted to. Like I've always photographed the work that I really loved, and I didn't sort of do work or show work that was just for money. And it's also nice to have a side job that you can help pay for your equipment and stuff. But. So did this big outdoor exhibition in Belgium, which is like greatest thing, I think, for me. It was really exciting. Photos that giant everywhere. And this is Charles Hartman. And this is the next series I'm going to show. So not to bombard you with photographs, but this is my latest commercial fishing venture. So now I kind of own my own boat, and I fish for salmon every summer in Bristol Bay, Alaska. And it's about a month and a half to 2 month long season. And me and maybe 130 other fishermen live in this abandoned cannery complex. It's been abandoned since the 50s, and it's in a really, it's about a 2-hour boat ride from a really small native village that you have to fly into in Southwest Alaska. And we basically pull in, and everyone's kind of squatted their own little portion of this little town. And we've all, bring in propane, and we create rainwater. We turn our roofs into rainwater containers and whatnot. And kind of live here. It's like summer camp. And it's called Graveyard Point because there's this graveyard that's been eroding away off the point for as long as people can remember. So every year we show up, and there's like a new section of a casket falling out of the cliffs, and fresh bone, human remains. But it's so remote, no one really cares or does anything about it. So I'm totally. This series is more about the people of this place. It's a melting pot of people from all over the country that show up every year. There's like guys from Arkansas, there's dog mushers from middle of Alaska, there's natives, there's guys live in New York City and come out and do it sort of for fun. There's all sorts of religious groups. It's this crazy scene. And everyone's packing, pretty much.
What kind of fishing do you guys do?
It's sockeye salmon, gill netting.
Gill netting, so you have
Yeah.
from the shore?
Yeah, just little boats. We're anchoring the nets. Maybe there's a photo here. Show you in a minute. So let me go back to this one real quick. There we go. So we're anchoring these gill nets. They're about 150 feet long, and they're anchored on both ends, and the tide comes in. Basically, there's 30-foot tide differences, so the tide comes rushing in like a river, and the fish come in with the tides. And then when the tide goes out at low tide, the whole thing becomes this mud flat. And so it's a really unforgiving part of Alaska. It's this totally flat, muddy. There's almost no life except for, there's no life in the sea except for the fish passing through because it's this muddy river delta. And there's the worst mosquitoes you've ever seen, and grizzly bears roaming the shores everywhere. So it's, and then all these humans and a lot of people totally out of place, kind of greenhorns showing up and never been to Alaska, and they're showing up in this place, where we're working these crazy hours and everyone has guns. So it's always fun every year to see the new guys show up all doe-eyed, and
They drag the net.
yeah, so we drag the nets up at low tide, and then we'll anchor them, and then we can go in and actually get some sleep, and then the water comes in and floods the nets, and then we come out and pick them as the tide starts to slow down again. So this is Billy, who I worked with for the last few years. So there's usually just 2 people per boat. Those are the tenders that come in, and we deliver our fish because it's too far to actually commute with all the fish. And we're constantly just exploring these dilapidated canneries around. There used to be canneries all along this river, and now it's more efficient to keep all the canneries central at another river nearby. So there's these incredible, causeways. This is like a half a mile long wooden dock that used to go out to the tenders that would show up there. So there's a good view of what's going on. The tide is rushing really hard this way, and when the net gets super filled up with fish, it actually starts buoying up, and it actually doesn't fish as well anymore. So we're constantly cleaning all the fish out of the net. And when the fishing's really hard, we're just fishing around the clock and sleeping an hour here and there whenever we can. It's one of the characters. There's a whole group of guys that are like kind of East Bay gangster style guys, and it's pretty funny. They're totally out of place out there. And this is our buddies. They left the net in too long, and something you never know. The fish will come in and really densely, and these guys, by the time they got the net on their boat, the boat was so heavy that they went and tied up to the tender and ended up sinking later that night. So it's just wreckage everywhere from this abandoned cannery, and then one day this eagle showed up. It's pretty rare to see an eagle up there.
So is there anybody that was out there?
No, most don't when they start out there. It's sort of it's mostly people from lower 48 states, and some of them are fishermen in other regions, but a lot of people that do this, because it's only about a month and a half of the year, there's a lot of people that have regular jobs elsewhere, and they come up and just do it for the summer. So So yeah, that's what's interesting about it. Really, you get all these people that don't necessarily thrive in this environment, and you get to see how they react out there. This, by the way, the bear. We have bears everywhere, and this is a bear. This is sort of in town where we store all our gear and stuff. And I was unloading our skiff and walked down the beach, and suddenly this bear came walking out, and he was obviously wounded and limping. And I have no idea what happened to him, but it looked like he had been shot in the left shoulder. And he had collapsed and was laying face down in the mud. So I kind of went up to take a photograph of him while he was just laying in the mud. And I was about 15 feet away, and he stood up and gave me this stare. It was kind of the last stare, and then he collapsed again. And then, whoops. Oh, and this is my girlfriend, Eugenie, flew up and met with me after the season, and we packed up all this food. We were going to go on this incredible adventure up the river, and we had 2 full totes of food and 2 or 3 weeks worth of food, and parked the boat in front of our camp that night, and came out the next morning, and the whole boat had been finger painted by a bear with mud, and the bilge was filled with milk, and everything, half of our food had been eaten, and so it's a pretty wild place. This is another bear encounter. A guy got approached by a crazy bear in the night and had to shoot him. So this is them sort of weird procedure, like Fish and Game. When you shoot a bear, you have to report it, and then Fish and Game asks you to chop off the head, chop off the claws, and skin it, and send the fur and the claws and the head into them so that there's no trophy. So you can't say, oh, I accidentally shot this bear in self-defense. It's like, so anyway, I photographed the process of them doing this. This is pretty strange. One of the local kids. And this is Billy, who has been my deckhand for the last 3 years. She's pretty tough. So that's pretty much, I think we're pretty much out of time. There's a few more photos I can show that are not fishing that I'm kind of working on. I could breeze through. Is there enough time? Okay. So I'll sort of breeze through these last ones. I've shown you a lot of fishing work, and I also am really interested in relationships between humans and animals. I grew up with 5 cats, and they would all sleep on my face at night, and a couple dogs, and I had 7 rabbits and a snake, and that, along with all the gore from fishing and the animal killing, I'm really curious how different people interact with animals, how they treat animals, what they feel is right and wrong when it comes to I'm losing my thought, but anyway, here is my human animal series. A lot of strange moments I've come across. It's an unplanned series. It's sort of all these strange moments I've encountered. This is one of my best friends, and his girlfriend obviously was in charge of decorating his bedroom, and I walked in, and he had this enormous cat, and I sort of set this up. And this is my other best friend's elderly pug. So I like to, I don't think you always have to plan a series and see it to finish. Like I like to just discover moments and curate them afterwards sometimes. And so I'm always photographing a lot of different things. And eventually I start to see these patterns that I'll put together and make into a series. I was in Norway and I was getting attacked by swans, and they were literally attacking me, so this is a legitimate feeling of the moment. I just spent the day at Disneyland one time just photographing people. And this guy in Mexico that had like this, they called him the Rat in town, and he had this huge tent he made and dug a huge pit and put a tent over it, and he would rent hammocks for like 50 pesos an hour or something, and it was just like a chill tent. He was just a crazy person, I think. And I spent a lot of time in Norwegian Lapland and photographing fishermen, and also always, interested in the clash of tourism and the locals. I'm not going to explain that. Mm-hmm. This is my sister washing her guinea pig in her sink. And out of all the photos, I'm always photographing a lot of adventure and action. And this is one of two photos I've ever had published in National Geographic magazine, and they chose the raccoon and the cookie. I would have thought they would have chosen the crab fishing or something, but. So I guess I'm still continue to make photos like this that arouse your curiosity and don't come with any sort of explanation, but you kind of wonder what's happening. And this is sort of the lead photo for an exhibition I just had at Charles Hartman, and there's a bunch of flyers in the back too. You're welcome to just take one with you and leave. This is Alaska. Yeah, this is a lot of octopus caught in cod pots, fishing for cod, and then catch these octopus, and then turn around and just use them for bait. So they're all kind of hanging, and it's a really cold day, so they're all kind of frozen to the deck. But it created this kind of alien encounter kind of feel I liked. This is a bird in Bikini Atoll, like absolutely going to take my eyeballs out if the branch wasn't in the way. It had probably never seen a human being before. Okay, so I'll leave it at that, and feel free to ask any questions if you'd like, if there's time for Q&A or whatever. Yeah.
I'm just curious, you mentioned fishing being sort of lonely or isolated or something like that, and I'm curious how contemporary communication technology has changed, like if you have access to the internet or cell phones, like if that world is becoming less isolated. And then the other question is, you talked about being hired to do maybe sort of more environmentally minded projects, and how if you're talking to a crew and saying, oh, you know, your boat is, want to take some pictures, that the balance between like, hey, I'm a fisherman like you, versus telling what the photographs are going to be used for. It sounds like that's something you thought a lot about.
Yeah. Basically, I really kind of vet the jobs I'm going to do. I've had some people try to license images off me, and I just turn them down because it wouldn't be right for, whether or not I agree with what they believe in, the fishermen I'm photographing would not be happy about it, you know? So I I definitely want to be sensitive to the subjects. I don't want to burn my bridges and everyone thinking that, it's a small community, even though it's a huge community, but it's a small world, people kind of talk. So, and honestly, there's a lot of topics that I'm kind of undecided on, it's hard to know what's morally right or wrong. So I make sure that I'm also just really clear with the fishermen what I'm shooting and who I'm shooting for. In the Europe trip, unfortunately, no one had really even heard of Pew. So I was really clear with what I was doing, but no one really did the background check or anything. But that all worked out great in the end, anyway. And everyone was happy, so. As far as communication, when I started fishing, there was no cell phones or anything up there. And when I started crabbing, there would be a huge line at the payphone the night before the season opened. And, for crab, there was about 300 boats fishing, and everyone would leave at the same time. So there was a couple just rink-a-dink payphones. Half of them were broken, and there'd be a massive line of guys who have to wait an hour or so just to make a phone call to call your girlfriend or loved ones. But nowadays, seems like most people have cell phones. But where we're out at Graveyard Point is pretty remote, and you have to have a local service, a special local cell phone, and it's really expensive, so most people kind of stay away from it. And I can't get email out there, so that's nice. Yeah. That's one of the beauties of fishing, is a complete escape from modern life. It's a huge break, and I come back really refreshed. So, anything else?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll have the gallery.
Thank you.